Welcome to Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 42. Hi, I'm Chris. This podcast is designed for the Becoming Ellie community, which is women over 50 who want to focus on getting and staying fit, eating healthy, and maintaining an active lifestyle as we grow older.
Hi, I'm Jill. If you're new to our community, you may be wondering who Ellie is. She's the Norse goddess of aging. Ellie became our role model when Chris and I heard about her. She surprised everyone after she was challenged to a wrestling match with Thor and won. We want to be fit and strong like Ellie as we age.
Our podcast is designed to help bring information to others who are interested in being like Ellie, the Becoming Ellie community.
If you enjoy our podcast, tell a few of your friends. Send them the link and show them how to listen on their phones or computers. You can find our podcast in many places. Pandora just surprised me this week by suggesting that I listen to Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast. I said, yes, I think I will. They know me well.
Yeah, I guess they do. Yes, I consider being fit after 50 a combination of exercise, healthy eating, and training to be strong, both physically and mentally. I think that might be why I am so excited about this particular episode today. It encompasses all of that.
Today's podcast features Nita Sweeney, the author of Depression Hates a Moving Target, How Running with My Dog Brought Me Back from the Brink. She lives in Columbus, Ohio.
Nita shares her personal journey about running, training, and overcoming obstacles, both mentally and physically. And the dog. You gotta love the dog.
Oh, yeah, definitely. She is very inspirational. Well, Nita is very inspirational. The dog's pretty cool, too. Let's go to the podcast, shall we? Nita Sweeney is the author of a memoir, Depression Hates a Moving Target, How Running with My Dog Brought Me Back from the Brink. Her book was published in May 2019. It was shortlisted for the Faulkner Society Award. Nita is an author who has been published in a variety of newspapers, newsletters, and magazines, including Buddhist America, Dog World, Writer's Journal, and Country Living. Nita earned a bachelor's degree in journalism from the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University, a law degree from Ohio State, and an M.F.A. in creative writing from Goddard College.
She studied with and assisted Natalie Goldberg, author of Writing Down the Bones. Besides writing and teaching, Nita now runs. She has competed 3 full marathons, 26 half marathons, and more than 60 shorter races. She was 49 when she began to run again. Welcome, Nita. We're so happy to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Chris and Jill. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So I read your book and I really enjoyed it, and I'm so happy to get a chance to talk with you about your journey today.
Thank you.
We're really excited about this one. Reading your book, it got me really jazzed because I see myself in that book so much.
Well, I'm half sorry about that, but thank you.
Well, I didn't know before all this. I didn't know that you had trouble with your ankle, and man, that is me all over. And I don't know. There's just so many things, parallels that it's so inspiring. So.
Oh, thank you. I'm always excited when people read the book because, it's kind of just my story, but it's a lot larger than that too. I'm very happy when it touches other people. So.
Well, good. Yes, I really enjoyed it. It was a good read, that's for sure.
For those who have not had a chance to read the book, can you tell our listeners how you got started with running?
Sure. It was by accident. It feels that way. I was just shy of my 49th birthday, and I'd had a horrible few years. I had 1 year where just a whole bunch of people I loved died, and a cat. And I suffer from chronic depression anyway, so I'd fallen back into a really serious slump. And I was sitting on the sofa with my laptop, scrolling through Facebook, when a high school friend posted that she had taken up running. She said something like, "Call me crazy, but this running is getting to be fun." And my first thought was, Kim? Running? Really? I mean, it was one of those, moments like that. But then I looked further and realized she was doing an interval training plan. And I heard the words I read the words 60 seconds of jogging. That's all I really saw. And I thought, I can jog for 60 seconds. I can do that. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't do it right away. I watched her for a while, kind of, winter sort of turned into spring and things started to sprout. One day I leashed up my yellow Labrador, Morgan. I picked up a digital kitchen timer, one of those little square little kitchen timers.
Yeah.
And I went down into this secluded area in our neighborhood called Donna Ravine because I was afraid people would laugh at me if they saw me at my age, at my weight, my awkwardness, my bad clothes, all of those things. I just thought they would laugh. I mean, I was very self-conscious and we jogged for 60 seconds and I didn't die of a heart attack, which is what my brain was telling me. And I almost liked it. So I kind of continued with that for a while. And then some challenges came up and, that's all in the book. But that's how I got started. It was just the simple act of somebody else sharing their journey. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever tell that high school friend the effect her post had on you? Yes,
I did. It took me a while to kind of, I almost want to say, come out of the running closet because I just didn't feel, a lot of the question in the book is, am I a real runner now? How about now? Does that make me a real runner? How about now? That's sort of the question, one of the themes throughout the book. But yes, I have been in contact with her. And in fact, she and I have done a couple of 5Ks. Unfortunately, her brother, who was another classmate, had a brain cancer and ultimately died. And there was a 5K before he died and there has been a memorial 5K after, and she usually comes up for that. So she lives in Florida. Yeah, I'm in touch with her. And I just can't thank her enough. It was such a simple thing. I think that's the thing I'm learning too, now that the book has come out, is that these simple little things, you just never know what is going to touch somebody else's life. It just has to be the right moment for that person.
Right. Your memoir it's about a number of things, but one of the things it's about is that it did help you deal with your depression. What was it about running that did that? It was more than just endorphins, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Actually, what's interesting is that once I did a little bit of research on it, it's actually endocannabinoids. Oh. So, yeah, like marijuana. Yeah. So there's a similar neurotransmitter that you get from cannabis.
Oh, and, so it's that is where the runner's high comes from, I assume?
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah. It's not quite the same, obviously, but right. It's similar. So there is a definite chemical component to running. I have no science for this, but I'm also a meditator, have meditated for at least 25 years. And I believe there's something about the rhythm of running that is very meditative and that rewires your brain. There's that. The other thing for me, eventually I joined a running group. I'd actually joined an online group first before I joined a physical group. And the fellowship, the companionship of the people who had that running thing in common filled a need. I felt a sense of accomplishment when I printed out a running schedule, a training schedule especially for that first 5K. And, it said to run for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. And I could check that off. So there was a sense of accomplishment. So it's actually a very multifaceted treatment in my mind. And the result for me, which is not the same for everybody, I'm very, very careful not to say it was a cure, but the result for me was to be able to reduce the number of medications I was on to feel better. My mood is definitely better than it was.
Yeah. And how did running with your dog help you to get started with the running?
I was paranoid. That's probably put it mildly. I was convinced that the neighbors were not only watching, but they would laugh. Of course, mind you, I live in a bedroom community where nobody was home during the day when I started this. But I was convinced that they would. And so I took the dog for moral support. Now, I was used to walking with the dog, but running was a whole different thing for me. Even though I was barely, when we started, the dog did not have to break stride in order to keep up. That's how, quote, fast I was going. But he was a very, he's a yellow lab, and they have these, and this dog in particular was a very, just kind of an old soul sort of dog. So he just had this stable attitude. Even his gait was very stable. He just trot, 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 trot. I just felt I needed him. I don't know how else to say it. I just couldn't do it alone. And so
he was a great companion for you, and probably really liked to go out for the runs.
Oh my gosh. If he would hear, like, I'd accidentally hit that timer, or I'd head toward the rack where I got my shoes, he would be all over me. He would be jumping. Oh yeah. He knew.
He was ready to go.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
And you know how you were saying you felt a little paranoid with the people watching you? I get that. I think that's pretty common. And I don't think you have to be over 50 to feel that way either.
Well, I know when I first started running, I would go out at 10 o'clock at night and run. My street at the time was a circle. I could go around the block in a complete circle. And I would run that circle repeatedly, but I would go at 10 o'clock at night so nobody could see me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That, I have to say, that makes me feel, I'm so sorry. And that makes me feel really, really good, because, and I have heard that. It's not as if I haven't heard that, but yes, I think it is much more common. At the time, I thought I was just really nuts, but I think it is. So.
Yeah.
Well, and there is the whole clothes thing, and that, I don't know, there's something about it, that, especially when you're first starting, that it's just such a novel thing to be doing, that I get it. So you've now run several marathons and a lot of half marathons and other distances. Is there a distance you prefer?
I would love to say that the marathon is my favorite distance, and I would be lying. The half marathon is probably my favorite distance. I like the idea of running a marathon. I like having run a marathon. I like being able to say I run marathons, but being able to walk after a race is really, really nice. So, especially we travel a lot to go to races. I've been trying to do halves in each of the 50 states. I'm up to 18.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's great.
My husband and I love to travel, and we combine it with, he likes to go to the presidential libraries, and then I run a half. So we try to time it that way.
Oh, that's cool.
If I'm going to walk through a presidential library the day after a half, or after a race, I usually want it to be a half. So
right.
Yeah. There's something about marathon, though, that the training for it especially is such a commitment. It is really good for me to train for fulls, because it's such a challenge. It's a way to kind of prove who you are. You're out there at mile 20. You either trained or you didn't. And, but I think the half is just a better distance. It's still a very respectable distance. It's difficult. It's a challenge, but it's not as hard as on your body.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, after all of those races, which one means the most to you?
Oh, the Steps for Sarcoma. I'm actually going to choke up. It's a 5K. It's the first 5K I did. I've done it either in person or virtually every year that the race was run. It was first run in 2010. And in 2007, my niece, Jamie, died of osteosarcoma. It was my sister's only child.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was a rough year. It was just it's one of those things you can't, the older people are supposed to go first. So when a child dies, it's just, the world is like turned on end.
Right.
So that's the race every year that just feels, it's always bittersweet, because there's lots of survivors that come and their families. And then there's, people whose families, whose children have died, people whose dogs have died. Dogs get sarcoma also. So it's the one that of all the races is the most personal for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see why.
What was the first marathon that you did?
I did Columbus in October of 2012. Columbus Marathon here in Central Ohio.
Right. Okay.
And it's not flat.
You
No.
I remember the very first 5K I did, it was a lymphoma fundraiser that I just did. It wasn't, I had no connection to it. I went and drove the course before I did it, and I thought, oh, this is pretty flat. This is okay. Well, there's a big difference between riding in your car and running something. I'm running it thinking, where did these hills come from? I didn't realize they were here. Yeah. So I would always think that a Columbus race would be flat because Columbus is fairly flat.
It's not like Pennsylvania. I did the Runner's World Half, and that is not flat. Or Salt Lake City is seriously not flat.
Sure.
But it's just deceptive. There's rollers, and then there's a couple of very long, gradual inclines that hit at mile markers that make them a little difficult. So I just always joke because people say, Columbus, it's flat and fast. Yeah, it's
right.
Really, actually.
Not really. Okay.
Flat is all relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It is, definitely. So in your book, you talk frequently about your running shoes and the different brands that you tried. And I'm always struggling with running shoes and pain and what's good and what works for me. I'd like to know if you have any advice for us on selecting the best shoes for running.
Trial and error. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, right now I run in Newton Gravities, but they have changed it again. They changed that model again. And I'm probably at the place where I'm going to have to find another brand. And for me, probably the most important thing is to get a toe box that's wide enough, or narrow enough. Because your feet swell. When you run, they swell. In most shoes, I wear a 9 to a 9.5. In running shoes, I wear a 10.5.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, I have to have that. Otherwise, you get blisters. I mean, you will get, I promise. So what I do is when I get a new pair of shoes, I usually take them to a track, and then I will run a mile in the new shoes and then do the rest of my distance in my regular shoes, because one of the fastest ways I think of getting injured is doing any kind of change too quickly. There's a principle in ski running called gradual progress. And that has been true for me with shoes, is just trying them for a little while. And, it's not just about breaking them in. It's about figuring out if they work for your body. So I'm kind of weird about that. I'll take them. I love running on an indoor track. And so I'll take them to an indoor track or an outdoor track, someplace where it's pretty flat. And I'm not going to mess them up too bad, because the running store will usually take them back if I put a couple miles on them. And I haven't run in dirt or on pavement. So track is usually not going to make any marks on the bottom of the shoes. And then just see how they feel and trust how they feel. I've been really, really lucky that I haven't had to have orthotics or a lot of those other kinds of devices. But I ran barefoot. I didn't run completely barefoot. I ran in swimming shoes for a while. I ran in some very, very minimalist shoes. And then what I realized is that the bottoms of my feet would hurt after about 5 or 6 miles. And so I needed a little bit of cushion. As we age, we lose the fat on the bottom of our feet. And so I need a little more cushion now than I might have if I had started this all when I was in my 20s. So.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but I know when I go to the shoe store, they are always putting me in the giant, lots of cushioning in there.
The high heel marshmallow sneakers.
Yes, exactly.
The marshmallow sneakers. Well, I know when you said that there's less fat on the bottom of your feet, I noticed that when I started to run some long distances, it was the different types of surfaces that I was running on that made a difference. If I was used to running sort of on a trail or on, gravel, like little pea gravel, if I switched over to the street, it really hurt. You know what I mean? It was harder, much harder, or sidewalks particularly.
I think there's a lot of people that enjoy running on trails, and I mean, it's softer. It just is. It's not, you don't have pavement on top of concrete. I have that weird ankle that I talked about. So it doesn't move as freely as my left ankle doesn't move as freely as my right ankle. So I have to be careful with that because I can sprain it very easily.
Sure.
So I don't run on trails. I'll run on there's like a couple gravel paths I'll run on. But if there's any roots or rocks or anything that's too much dimension, too technical at all, I would love it. I love to be out in the woods, but I can't. I can walk on it, but I can't run on it. So
it's just
but I think you're exactly right. There's a lot of people I know as we've all aged together. It's funny, our pace group is kind of all aged together in this running group I'm in, and many of the women and the men too, but we're mostly women, have moved to trail races because they find it, well, it's a whole different environment, first off, but also the surface is just a better surface.
Yeah.
Right. Except for those roots.
Right. Well, that was one of the things that struck me about reading your book. You were talking about how active you were on the online running group. And can you talk to our listeners a little bit about that? Like, how did it help? How did you get started with that group and a little bit more about that?
Well, I'm an off the scale introvert and I require a lot of sleep. So I'm awake at weird hours sometimes. So being able to hop online, and I was very familiar with user groups and listservs back when, the internet first came out. Right. So when I heard about these online running groups at the time, I think it was on active.com, there was a group called the Penguins Calling All Runners, and it was named after John Bingham, who was an author. He was a columnist for Runner's World. He's written a number of books about running, and it was named after him because he calls himself the Penguin. And they were people that were encouraging beginning runners. And so I just sort of read it for a while, kind of, because you can just, what did they used to call it?
Lurk. Like lurking.
I know, I couldn't think of the word. Yeah, I just lurked for a while and watched and read the things they were saying. And I learned a lot just from doing that. And then eventually I started to have experiences that I could share where I had figured out, a good pair of shoes or not to wear cotton when you're going to sweat and then it's going to freeze, things like, things like that. Or after I'd run my first 5K, people were sharing those kinds of things and getting cheered for their accomplishments. And so I hopped in once I felt that I had something to share. And it really was very quick. I like to be on the outside of the inside. So I don't like to be in the middle of a group, but I don't like to be completely out either. So that was very, very comfortable for me. And for some people, it's not. We have to find what works for us. That's why it was so odd when I actually joined a running group. If I hadn't had what happened with the running group was I started talking about running and learning that people I knew that I didn't even realize ran belonged to this running group.
Oh.
And that's how running group. I'm not sure I ever would have joined it, but there were people that I knew. And I was very afraid because I don't like big crowds of people. It's funny. I can speak to 1,000 people, but put me in a group of, 30 people and I can be paralyzed. So it was very weird. But when you're on the trail, you're only, we have to go 2 by 2 so the bikes can go by. So you're only talking to one other person. And once I figured that out, I was fine. So the online group was a way to stick my toe in as much as I was comfortable without having to be immersed and then possibly overwhelmed. Because that's the thing I'm always not fighting, but always challenged with is being overwhelmed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So when you joined the local running group, how did that help you?
It was very similar. There was a structure. So they had a training plan. And the reason I joined was because I really wanted to run a half marathon. I had run some 10Ks by then. And like I said, I started meeting these other people who ran with this. It's called Marathoner in Training, and they train for half and full marathons. And I started meeting there were people I already knew who would say, oh, yeah, I run with MIT. Oh, yeah, I run with MIT. So I just went to an info session, and that's an interesting scene in the book. I go to this info session and I talk to the Jeff Henderson, he's like the head gezook in charge of MIT. And I went up to him afterwards and I basically gave him my entire list of reasons why I was not a good candidate for running. Just wanted to get me out of it. And he just very, very gently explained how everything I was afraid of could be dealt with. And then proceeded to tell me his mother, who is at least 15 years older than me, was running a half marathon.
There is something about seeing another person and thinking, if they can do it, maybe I can do it.
Yes. That's exactly how it happened. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, of course, you get the support as you're doing your training. You get the support that you can actually do this.
You get the training plan. You have the camaraderie of the other people. You get water on the trail. So I do carry water, but water and Gatorade, they actually have both on the trail. Yeah, it's we pay to belong to the group, but there's a sense of community. They have information sessions. They always have a physical therapist who's there at the end of the run. If you have any aches and pains, you can go talk to the PT and they'll give you, exercises or tell you if they think it's something serious. I mean, it's it's a huge support system. So and again, I had the physical benefit of the exercise plus this whole in-person camaraderie.
Right.
So it, took everything from that online group to a whole new level in person.
Yeah, that's great. I've never run with a group really, so I was kind of jealous of that. I may have to look for something here.
We're really lucky. I will say we're really, really fortunate to have this huge. It's through our local Fleet Feet and Front Runner are the two running stores that support that MIT program.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the running stores around here have different groups, but I've always felt like they're so much faster than me. I've always been a slow runner, and I read in the book that you said you struggled with being slow. And how did you deal with that? Did you work on increasing your speed or just change your attitude towards it, or?
Yes and yes. The group, that's one of the great things about MIT that you're not going to find in a lot of running groups. They have everything from 7-minute milers, Boston qualifiers, to walkers. And it depends on the day. I'm in either the 13 group or the 14 group. And the paces in those groups vary. There are days when people are doing 8. It's just all over the place. The group at the back of we're sort of like, we're sort of the catch-all, everybody before the walker. Mm-hmm. Frankly, sometimes the walkers finish before we do because they're speed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to choose. I had to try to get faster, but you always have to balance that against injury.
Right.
And I'm taking a long view because a big part of why I run is for mental health. So I realized that if I get injured, I have lost a huge toolkit in my mental health, kit.
Right.
So I'm always balancing that. Yes, I would love to be faster. I'm always looking for, should I do low heart rate training? Oh, maybe some speed work. How about some hill work? Let's do ASO 800s. I'm always looking for that thing.
Right.
Always balancing that against the possibility of being injured. So a lot of it was just a change in attitude that I'm not going to win any of these races. Now I might win my age group. I've done that before, which is kind of,
yeah. That's kind of where I would try to focus when I was going slow. Plus, I just thought somebody has to be last in these races. And there's no reason why it couldn't be me.
Right.
Because I have been last in several races.
Yes. My friend Jill Grunewald wrote that book, Running with a Police Escort, and I just love that.
I can totally relate. Yes.
Yeah. It's not last; it's running with a police escort. So
exactly.
Right. Yes. So you mentioned earlier about chi running. What is that? And just if you could tell us about that.
Sure. Danny Dreyer invented or coined the term chi running He's a Tai Chi practitioner. And so he combined running with Tai Chi principles. So in any kind of meditation practice, you often have a focus. You choose a focus. So in Chi running, you choose a form focus. It might be to choose during a particular run to focus on mid-foot strike. It might be choosing to feel the earth rolling back, as if it were a ball rolling beneath your feet. It might be pelvic tilt. They have a whole technique that they use. So the first thing you do is you sort of learn their technique, and then you choose to focus on one aspect of that technique for each run. And then when your mind wanders, you bring it back. And the idea is that you learn through gradual progress to improve your form. But it's also kind of a mindset that you're running as a meditation. Mm-hmm. Because I've been a meditator for a long time, it was just a really good fit for me. Now, I'm not that good at it, I'll say. I work on my form. Partly because of the wonky ankle issue, I lose track of it sometimes. But it's really, especially the gradual progress. Like I was able to increase my cadence when I first started running, and when I first discovered Chi running, my foot strikes per minute were about 150. And most of the elite runners, their foot strike per minute is about 180. So very gradually, using a clip-on metronome, I was able to increase my foot strike to around 170 so that I don't even think about it. That's my natural foot strike. And if I really think about it, I can get it up into the 180s. The idea is that if your foot strike is higher, you're not going to be reaching in front of you with your foot, and so you won't be heel striking, which there's a lot of controversy as to whether heel striking is good or bad or, that kind of stuff. But I find that when I'm not heel striking, I am in less pain. I can run further, faster, more efficient. So that is one of my goals, is to increase my cadence. That's like the easiest way to improve my form, is just by. So that's one of the things, that, like a hallmark.
Did you have, was there a local trainer for that around you?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah, we have 2 Chi running instructors here in Columbus, Ohio, Doug Dapo and Jeanette. Oh, I can't remember her last name. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
But there's 2 Chi running instructors. There's a website, and you can go on the website. They have a directory of all the instructors. So I took a 4-hour class, but there are books, there are CDs. There's lots of ways to learn that technique without actually having to go to a class. I found it very beneficial. I learn best face to face.
Right.
That's the way that's my own style. So, and the other thing that he did was he videotaped us before the class and then after the class, and then showed the side-by-side comparison. That was really powerful to see that just in 4 hours, we could make a pretty big change in our posture.
Wow. Okay. We could find resources about it online, or we could read about it, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think it's chirunning.com. And then the book is called Chi Running. It's CHIRUNNING.
Okay.
And Danny Dreyer is the person. He goes around and speaks. He was at the Air Force Marathon a couple of years ago. I went and heard him talk. And that he's actually in North Carolina, the founder. And then he teaches classes all over the world. And then there are other instructors who teach, workshops, like weekend workshops too.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll have to look into that, or at least I will.
You said that you struggled a lot with a sore ankle and pain when you first started running. And did the Chi running help with that? And, you mentioned a couple other physical therapy things that you did. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, it's very funny. A friend of mine asked me the other day after she had read the book, and we were having breakfast, and she said, "So what exactly did you do about your wonky ankle?" That's what I call it, my wonky ankle. And I said, I ran 3 marathons, 26 halves, and 80 shorter races. And so I'm not actually sure. What I did was I calmed down. And I realized that I wasn't doing any further damage. I had a couple of different professionals tell me that if I could stand the pain, I wasn't hurting it any further, which is what one doctor told me, I was going to be unable to walk. He was very, very concerned. So I ignored him. I don't want to say it.
Sometimes you have to do that.
It's hard to do that when you're having a lot of pain and you see it swell all up. But
yeah. So that's what would happen. It would swell up. But the thing was, it would swell up and then it would go right back down. And
okay.
I sit and I would put it up, and then I might take a couple weeks off, and then it would just go back down. So my situation is not, I'm not telling people, oh, ignore your injuries. My situation, it's a chronic thing I have to live with. And I have learned how to manage it. Very similar to how I manage my depression and bipolar disorder. It has, knock on wood, not been the kind of thing that has required surgery or has kept me off the roads for more than a few weeks at a time. So it's sort of like how I try to say running is not a cure for depression. Running is also not a cure for everyone's injuries, but it did seem to help mine. It was almost as if my ankle just had to get used to that type of movement and that amount of exertion.
Yeah.
So you used ice quite a bit when you were doing physical therapy, or?
Yeah, I went through physical therapy and they would always ice it afterwards. And quite honestly, now there are studies that are saying that ice is not always the best thing because your needs to swell and then go back down. But I think if you have an actual injury, that's different. You need to get that inflammation down. You do not want it to remain inflamed. So yeah, I did ice it, and then especially right before that first marathon, I was sort of icing everything. You get, especially during taper, which you may relate to.
Right.
You get these phantom pains that make no sense. They haven't, these are things like, your left earlobe suddenly is excruciating for no reason. It's just these random things. And so I was sort of icing everything. I don't ice too much now. And I don't ice bath. I figured out a great technique.
You don't ice bath?
No, I did it once, and I have a really great technique for doing it. But it's just so ridiculous, but I'm just much more likely to get in a hot shower, which is just the opposite of what they would tell you.
I know,
So,
I know, yeah.
Right.
Just don't do anything that I do. Yeah, don't.
So do you tape? Have you ever taped your ankle?
No. No.
No? Ace bandage?
No. I used a ankle brace, but the problem with it is it's already stuck.
See, it's already tight.
It's already, there's not, the problem is lack of mobility.
So you're not trying to restrict mobility. You're
right.
You wish you had more.
And everything I've read about it is that you want to be careful about restricting movement in joints. And again, I'm not a physical therapist. I'm a lawyer, a journalist, and I have an M.F.A. So just take it with a grain of salt. I have read say that the problem with restricting movement in any joint is that the muscles that are not being used atrophy. So part of what PT does is it tries to fire muscles that are not firing. And so if you wear a brace, sometimes you need that for stability. But what you're doing is you're training the muscles to not fire because the brace is doing the work for them. So sometimes people need braces. I'm not saying that. I chose to see what would happen without one.
Yeah. It sounds like it just depends on your injury, and you don't necessarily have to take what one doctor says to heart and continue to keep seeking an answer, right? I mean, is that the takeaway?
Yes, I think that's the takeaway. But I feel so strongly if you can find a doctor who runs.
Yes.
Because that doctor will understand not only your body, but your mind. And he or she will understand what running does for the rest of your life, for your psyche, for your family. So that doctor will help you do everything to get back on the road.
Yeah, that's very inspirational. Thanks for sharing all your insights here.
So, your husband, it sounds like you have a wonderful husband, but he was very supportive of your running, even though he doesn't run himself, I gather. Did you ever want him to join you running?
Well, if he ran, who would take the photos?
Good point. I guess that would be selfie time.
No, he doesn't. It's just not his thing. He lifts weights. He has other exercises he does. He's done everything. For a while, he did, Pilates, and he was doing bar 3 for a while. He does all kinds of things. He likes to do different things too. I have an infinite capacity for boredom. He has no capacity for boredom. Okay. So running would be brutal for him. He's just my biggest fan. I'll just give you an example. The audiobook came out yesterday. So,
wow.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Wow is seriously wow. So he read every single draft of this book, of Depression Hates a Moving Target. Every single draft. About 2 weeks before the book was released, we got my author copies. And so they were in boxes in my office. I came home one day and he was sitting on the sofa reading the book again from page 1.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I know. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm reading your book. Yeah. So, and then yesterday, I walk out of my office and he's walking around the house with his phone. He's got headphones on, which is not completely unusual. And I said, what do you listen to? Your book. I mean, it just doesn't give us. He has his hashtag. He has a hashtag. It's the 100% good husband, all spelled out. Just because we have our issues and none of us are perfect. It's kind of a joke because our current dog is so bad that she has a hashtag, the 99% good dog. And so he's the 100% good dog. But yeah, he's just been amazing. I tend to run things by him. He's a CPA. And he has a lot of business experience. He was a CFO of a number of different, both corporations and nonprofits. So he has a lot of kind of real world business experience. I was a lawyer in a very tiny little area, very specialized area of law, employment. And I have written, but I have no business experience. So anything like that. And he also has a lot of, he did conflict resolution workshops in prisons through a program that the Quakers did. And he's kind of like a very multidimensional man. You just never know what he's going to do next. So we make a really good team because I have all these crazy ideas and he has the know-how as to how to make them happen. And so it's really been good. I didn't get married till I was in my 30s, and he'd been married before. And so we've been a really good team. I don't know how else to say it. I love him dearly.
Well, that's great. But he is very supportive of your running, not counting everything else, but.
Yes, he is. Now at this point, he'll let me do a race, even a half marathon, actually even a marathon. Yeah. The last marathon I did was in Xenia. So let me back up. At this point, even in a marathon, he will go with me and see me off, and he will be at the finish line, but he won't be out there on the course anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
The first couple of races I did, the first 5 miler I did, he met me, at mile 2.5. He figured out how to go around all the roadblocks and stuff. Wow. And same thing with the marathon. He met me, my first marathon. I think he met me 3 different places. Wow. He was quite the Sherpa. Over the years, he just, it's gotten to the point that he knows that I don't need him there. The early races, I was still pretty fragile. I was still not, I still have a lot of issues, but I needed him to be there. And now he knows that I'm going to be okay, or that I can call if I'm not. So it's a little different, but yeah, he's still my biggest. So lucky. I'm so grateful for him.
Yeah, that's great. In the book, you talked about dealing with some of the weight issues, and is it okay if I ask you a little bit about has running changed how you eat?
Yes. The biggest thing is I recognize, I always knew that I had an issue with sugar, And so I recognized that. And when I first started using gels and beans and things like that, I pretty quickly realized that the amount of sugar in those was not going to work for me. So I actually eat nuts anytime I take I use those Marcona almonds that don't have any skin on them, because that way they don't suck. But as far as overall, I tried, we used to joke that we belong to the Diet of the Month Club because we've just tried everything under the sun. And I was on a food plan. It's called the slow carb diet for most of the period of time that the book was written, that the book covers, where you eat meat, vegetables, and beans 6 days a week. And then the seventh day you have a cheat day where you can eat anything you want. And I lost weight pretty amazingly, actually. It was almost like the weight just dropped off me. And I couldn't maintain that food plan. I just don't. So now I've probably gained back maybe 10 pounds from that, or 15. So I'm not quite as trim as I would like to be, but I'm definitely much more aware that I need to be eating for fueling. And I don't always do that. I still emotionally eat. I still, feed my emotions with food, but that especially before a long run, the days before a long run, a lot of sugar is not my friend at all.
Right. Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask you another question, but first, I gather that your current dog is not the dog in the book. You have a new dog.
Yes. I always hate to say that because, but yeah, Morgan, I would say he was 17.
Oh, my.
Wow.
About 3, we didn't know how old he was because he was a rescue. And he was definitely a yellow lab. His ears were a little short for a lab, but he was definitely a yellow lab. You can see pictures of him online. But he lived to be, I want to say 16, 17, and he died in November of 2017. And this is a great story. So he died. We were very, very sad. The house was very, very empty. And we knew he was at the end. He'd had congestive heart failure for like a year, and we took really good care of him, and he had a great doctor. So one morning, that was a Monday, he died. Wednesday morning, when Ed and I got up, Ed said, the house is so quiet. Kind of, what are we going to do about this, or how are we going to use this? And I said, we will either get used to it or we'll get another dog. And I was bereft. He just was my buddy. And it had been hard watching him age and be sick. And so I go and write in coffee houses, and there's actually a grocery store I write in because it has this huge community room. So I went there, and I'd actually just gotten off the phone with Morgan's cardiologist, who, I explained that Morgan had died, and he wanted to know what happened because he'd been treating him and just wanted to know the meds were working, all that kind of stuff. And it was a very natural decline. So I'd just gotten off this very cheerful conversation with this amazing cardiologist, and I get on my computer and I get a notice that Ed has sent me a photo. I open it up, and it's a photo of him holding a yellow Labrador puppy.
Oh, my.
And I messaged him. I said, I thought you were going to the bookstore. Well, there's a pet store next to the bookstore. And I was, I had this plan that we were going to give it some time, have a respectful time to mourn Morgan's death, and then we would get a rescue, maybe an older dog. No, we ended up with the pet store yellow Labrador puppy.
Oh,
and
my.
She's cool. Her name is Scarlet, and she is the 99% good dog because she is so bad. She's like a scamp. We've trained her and stuff, but she's just one of those dogs that until she's about 2 now, and until she gets a little older, we would just have to watch her because she just loves to steal things and run away with them and shred them. So we whole litany. If you go online and look at hashtag 99% good dog, all spelled out, no dashes, no numbers, you can see all the furniture, the television, the window. She just accidentally knocked a bone into a window, into the side light on our front door, and cracked it. Yeah.
Oh,
so
no.
I laugh, but it's really actually horrible, but she's just adorable. Yeah. kind of ridiculous. Yeah.
You can forgive her, though.
Oh, yeah, I do. Because I don't, train her even better. But she's just a scamp. That's part of it. It's a personality. She's a completely different. Morgan was, you could put an entire buffet of food on the coffee table, and he would just sit there and look at it and maybe give you a glance asking if he could eat something. But he would just sit there. If you put anything on a table and you even look away, Scarlett will have it, and she will have run to the other end of the house with it and devoured it before you even realize it's gone. So they're just completely different dogs.
Huh. That's funny. But well, I'm sorry to hear about Morgan, but that's the hard part about dogs, I have to say.
He was a really good dog. I've had many, many dogs in my life, as a little kid and as an adult, and he was by far the best dog I've ever had. He just had this personality that was so calm and so peaceful. He was very funny. He could jump and be silly, but he was just this big-hearted, smart dog. That's just who he was. You don't get that kind of dog every time. So
Right. So you have become a runner, and you have published your book, and now it's out as an audio book. So lots of exciting things for you. What's next?
Well, book tour and book promotion continues. So I'm heading to New Mexico next to spend some time with Natalie Goldberg, my writing teacher. And I'm so excited about this. I'm going to be reading in Albuquerque with Katie Arnold, who she won Leadville. She's an ultramarathoner and a writer for Outside Magazine. So that's coming up. But in terms of other books, I'm working on a proposal for a book of daily meditations about staying in the moment. They're actually practices. They're not just meditations, but actual little tiny exercises for keeping your mind in the moment. So
okay,
I'm working on that.
That's excellent. Good. I'll look forward to that.
That's the next thing. I just want to say I have the most amazing editor, Brenda Knight at Mango Publishing. She's the associate publisher at Mango. They have been so good to me. I cannot even tell you. I have been in the writing community for probably 20 years now and have heard all the stories, and I have been so cared for and handled so well. I just have to always say thank you, Mango, because they just have done a great job.
That's great.
That's great. Well, every one of the listeners have different opinions. As we age, there's a lot of opinions about what constitutes fit and strong, especially when it comes to women over 50. And I'm just wondering, what do you consider fit? How do you define fit?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that is so personal.
Sure.
What was fit for me at 47 was just to be able to walk around the block. I just was in a place where that was it. That was as good as I could make it happen. And now I like to think that if with a couple months training, I could run a half marathon.
Yeah.
There's a attitude about it that I have to adopt. I encourage people to assume they can do more than they think they can, because that's what I've proven to myself. But I also think it's really important that we not get down on ourselves, especially because the world is so busy.
Right.
And I'm very fortunate because I have a lot of time. Other people have jobs and kids, and then people get in the sandwich generation where they're not only taking care of their kids, they're taking care of their parents.
Sure.
Be really gentle with yourself, and you have to find your own fit, but also be prepared to push just a little, just a smidge, so you don't underestimate yourself.
That's great advice. If our listeners want to find out more about you or to buy your book, where should they go?
Well, my website is nitasweeney.com. That's the best place. There's an About the Book page there that has all the buy links. It's available wherever fine books are sold.
Okay.
It's online. You can buy it at a bookstore. I love it when people get it from their libraries. One of my highlights of my of this whole process was when I went online and saw that there were 31 holds on 16 copies of my book at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. That just made my day.
Aw,
So
that's great.
A lot of bookstores, if they don't have it in the store, they can order it. I'm a big fan of independent bookstores. So, ask your local bookseller to get the book and then have them call me and have me come and speak to your,
Oh, that is a good idea.
That's a great idea. Well, I'll tell you, it was a great read. I mean, I found myself smiling. I found myself getting choked up. And mostly, I found myself getting very inspired. It was just a great book. Great book.
Thank you. That makes me really, really happy. That was the plan. So thank you so much. And I'm also on all the social media channels, so they can, find me on Twitter, and I have a Facebook author page, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn.
We'll make sure that we put those in the show notes so that it's easy for people to click through and find you.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. It's so important. Women can be fit at any age. We can do this.
That's right. Thank you. And we'll talk soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I really enjoyed reading the book and now getting to know her. There was a lot I sure could relate to.
Me too. One of the things I really was struck with in the book and with talking with her is how much she used communities to support her in training. And it was sort of interesting because she used both online communities and a running community in her area. So, which made me think of the Becoming Ellie community that, we can support each other from afar, even when we have local resources too. It's a really nice support structure that she set up.
Yes, I think having input from other people that are going through the same things that you are, both the highs and the lows, and, just the struggles and trying to understand things. It's great having other people to turn to.
Yeah, it is.
Now, we have links on our website to her information, and you might be interested in downloading the audio version of her book to listen to during your training runs or exercise routines. It is a motivator for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Or you can find her book to buy.
Right. Of course. It's just hard to read it when you're running.
True. Exactly. But I do agree. It is motivating. Please tell us what you think by leaving a comment on our social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, or leave us a voicemail at 330-920-6662.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll be bringing another podcast in just a few weeks, and we're excited to talk with those experts as well.
That's right. See you again next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.